Hi, my name is Sinclair Ceasar III. I'm the CEO and founder of Sinclairity Consulting. We're your go-to resource for all things employee mental health. Growing up in New Jersey, we didn't really talk about mental health a lot. Grew up in a small town, always in church, playing drums, and whenever mental health came up, it was kind of like just pray it away. But as I grew as an adult, I realized that you need different resources. You need a therapist. Faith background is also important. But I still didn't really know what mental health really meant. So it wasn't until the year 2018 when I had a really big crisis that I was like, oh, this is how mental health could look. And so for me, it was a really great year in the beginning. I was doing great in my business. I was working full-time in crisis management. And that's important to note because when I went through my own crisis, my fellow employees were not equipped to support me. So what ended up happening was I just became kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde kind of character. I started losing sleep, sleeping for about 3 hours a night, running on fumes. But in the world of entrepreneurship, that's praised because I was getting a lot done. I was putting on lots of events. I was doing a lot of things coming to great success, but all the while my mental health was declining. And mental health and physical health are completely intertwined, right? And so my physical health was declining as well. What ended up happening was my workplace performance was declining. I was showing up late to things. I was burnt out. I was very irritable. A lot of noticeable signs, a lot of changes in my appearance. And I just was not the best employee. And eventually I ended up losing my role. And it was a very devastating thing. It was very public. I had been on social media at that time, very big influencer, and we lost pretty much everything. In 2019, I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. And the shame I felt from that diagnosis was unbearable. I actually told my wife, we had just had our first kid, our daughter, Isabella. I told her, I was like, I just really don't want to be here anymore. I don't know how I can be here with all this shame from all the things I did. I've lost followers, I lost my job, people who trusted me don't trust me anymore. And one of the hardest things was that people didn't even believe it was a mental illness. They just thought I was having like this 30-year-old life crisis. And so that was really tough. Actually, when I got the diagnosis, I told my wife, please don't tell anyone, even though people had already been telling me along the way, I think you have bipolar disorder. Eventually, through a lot of healing and this one big thing that happened that pulled me out of my shame, I was able to recover, but it was a really hard journey. I say that I was quarantined before COVID hit the next year. So when I was going through my manic episode, which is you're taking a lot of risk, you are traveling from one place to another. Some people actually end up getting married to somebody else completely when they're having a manic episode. Some people will buy a house. Some people will travel light years around the world and end up in a place where they can't get back home. And so a lot of things can happen. And for us, financially, we took a big hit. I spent our nest egg, everything. And so there were so many ways, so many places where people could have stepped in, but they didn't. Whether it was through fear or lack of education, and it was really heartbreaking. One thing that was happening during all that time was my wife was educating herself on bipolar disorder. I was already in the world of mental health before that, speaking and talking, but never about mood disorders, never about psychosis. And so she picked up a magazine called Bipolar Hope magazine. They came out quarterly back in the day in print, but now they're online. And she's just like, hey babe, read this. I hope you can read this one day. So I was sitting on our blue couch, dusty blue couch in Baltimore, Maryland. It was a really tough time because we were on one income and we just weren't where we could have been. We were doing so well before that. And I see Bipolar Hope magazine and I flip it open and I see a picture of a guy that looks like me. And he's saying that he was in the military and he had a very big manic episode and he ended up in a very dark place. But he said something that stood out to me. He said, but I'm still here. And the cynic in me would say, great, he survived. But for some reason, reading that story at that time, it really hit me and it showed me the power of storytelling and it showed me the power of relatability. And it just changed a lot of things for me. And then I ended up going to a support group and they were talking about how bipolar disorder is a disease of the brain and how everybody in that room was living with something differently, and I just felt like I could finally be seen and heard for once without holding my breath or trying to be something else. And so I said, from this point on, when I get through this, I will use my story to help other people unlearn that shame that comes with mental illness, and I will use my education, my expertise to help people to be educated around what mental health actually is and teach them how to support somebody, especially in the workplace, which is where we spend most of our lives. I started my business while in my previous career in higher education, so there was that transition. But there are two things that stood out to me when I was trying to establish myself as a business. Number one was dealing with uncertainty, right? This ever-changing economy. We're in the wake of COVID. There were so many things happening that said, just stay at your job and don't come out with this. And so I had to do a lot of meditation, talking to my psychiatrist, talking to my therapist, talking to my wife, talking to my friends who could hold me accountable, and really paying attention to my signs and symptoms to make sure that I wasn't doing the same thing again. And so I had what was called a WRAP plan, which is a Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and I still have it. And what it does is it helps you to prepare for the worst. So you identify all your warning signs, you figure out if you guys push that red button, who's gonna get called and what do we do, and you figure that out ahead of time so it doesn't have to get bad. So early intervention. Step two was organizing myself and establishing a routine, which is really hard to do as a business owner, but hard to do as in any type of leadership role. And so it's been trial and error. I'm still figuring it out, but using my calendar wisely and building in buffers so that I don't get burnt out, that was very helpful as well. So our signature flagship offer is our mental health first aid certification. So I deliver this course as a certified instructor, and just like CPR helps somebody aid someone else dealing with a heart attack, mental health first aid helps somebody aid somebody who is experiencing a mental health or substance use challenge. So this program is broken into several parts where it helps participants learn to recognize the early signs and symptoms of a challenge, how to refer somebody to appropriate resources, and also how to listen non-judgmentally and support them, especially when it's a non-emergency situation. I love it because I've gotten a couple testimonials from students who've gone through my program, and they've told me that they've actually been able to support somebody with life-saving advice and life-saving support. And one of the gentlemen told me that if he hadn't gone through it, he would have never provided those resources. He kind of would have just written it off and left. But because he had this training, he was able to go to his manual and figure out what the next steps were in real time. And because we had practiced and role modeled these tools and these techniques, he was able to implement them right in the moment. And that blew me away. So the course is an 8-hour course, so it can either be delivered 100% online, or most popular, a blended delivery. So that's 2 hours online, asynchronous learning, and then I'll do the rest of the delivery either online or in person. One thing I tell people when I'm speaking or training or doing executive coaching is that grace is the space we give ourselves to be broken, unfinished, and still unfolding. And I work really hard to give myself that grace, but I know I can't do it alone. I only can do it in community. So for me, you're getting somebody who has been there and sometimes is back there, and I'm sharing things that help me and can help others. So I have that conviction, I have that know-how, but I'm also that person who might be less intimidating than the professional you might immediately connect with. I like to bridge that gap. So I believe in what I do, and I use my story to help others feel less ashamed about their story. So I would encourage two people. I would encourage the person who's dealing with the diagnosis and the person who's supporting them. For the person who's supporting them, sometimes it's just like stick with it, but set boundaries. And so getting support yourself, finding resources, and being with family, because sometimes you'll get overwhelmed when you're living with somebody or supporting somebody who has a mood disorder. And for the person with the mood disorder, I would say just get to the next right thing. So if that's drinking water, if that's going to sleep, maybe you are staying up late at night. Maybe you call a warm line or a hotline, just that next right thing, because if you take it all in and go, I have this really big thing that I'm working through, that can leave you feeling exhausted and leave you feeling hopeless. But know that there's hope, know that I'm one more person on your team, I'm living with this as well, and that you are not your diagnosis. You can find us online at sinclarityllc.com, and you're able to sign up for our newsletter there and learn about our other programs and services.